Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. I hope you had a good day. I had a good day. Thank you. Let's use this time to turn inward. Open our hearts and minds. Open our very beings to wisdom. For even though we are here reading Theaetetus for the last time tonight, and the question, what is knowledge? What has called us here to the make-believe monastery is a love of wisdom. It's wisdom herself. So let's pray, let's hope. Let's be open to the idea that wisdom may speak through Plato and possibly through any inclinations that you yourself may have when you hear his words. Or mine, she speaks through the strangest objects. She can even speak through me. Socrates. In the same general way, we might also have true opinion about a wagon. I think wagon is spelled wrong. Does wagon have 2 G's? But he who can describe its essence by an enumeration of the 100 planks adds rational explanation to true opinion, and instead of opinion has art and knowledge of the nature of a wagon, and that he attains to the whole through the elements. Theaetetus. And do you not agree in that view, Socrates? Socrates. If you do, my friend. But I want to know first whether you admit the resolution of all things into their elements to be a rational explanation of them, and the consideration of them in syllables or larger combinations of them to be irrational. Is that your view? Precisely. Well, and do you conceive that a man has knowledge of any element who at one time affirms and at another time denies the element of something? Or thinks that the same thing is composed of different elements at different times? Assuredly not. And do you not remember that in your case and in that of others, this often occurred in the process of learning to read? You mean that I mistook the letters and misspelled the syllables? Yes. To be sure, Theaetetus, to be sure, I perfectly remember, and I am very far from supposing that they who are in this condition have knowledge. Socrates. When a person at the time of learning writes the name of Theaetetus and thinks that he ought to write and does write th and e, but again, meaning to write the name of Theodorus, thinks that he ought to write and does write t and e, can we suppose that he knows the first syllables of your 2 names? Theaetetus. We have either admitted that such a one has not yet attained knowledge. We have already admitted that such a one has not yet attained knowledge. Socrates. And in like manner, probably he, may enumerate without knowing them the second and third and fourth syllable of your name. Theaetetus. He may. Socrates. And in that case, when he knows the order of the letters and can write them out correctly, he has right opinion. Clearly. But although we admit that he has right opinion, he will still be without knowledge. Yes. And yet he will have explanation as well as right opinion, for he knew the order of the letters when he wrote, and this we admit to be the explanation. True. Then, my friend, there is such a thing as right opinion united with definition or explanation, which does not as yet attain to the exactness of knowledge. It would seem so. And what we fancy to be a perfect definition of knowledge is a dream only. But perhaps we had better not say so as yet, for where there are not free explanations of knowledge, one of which must, as we said, be adopted by him who maintains knowledge to be true opinion combined with rational explanation. And very likely there may be found someone who will not prefer this but the third. Theaetetus. You are quite right. There is still one remaining. The first was the image or expression of the mind in speech. The second, which has just been mentioned, is a way of reaching the whole by an enumeration of the elements. But what is the third definition? Okay, so the first was the image or expression of the mind in speech. Cool. The second, which has just been mentioned, is a way of reaching the whole by an enumeration of the elements. Both very good propositions and could be really fun to play with in dialectic, into dialogos. But what is the third? Socrates. There is further the popular notion of telling the mark or sign of difference which distinguishes the thing in question from all others. Can you give me an example of such a definition? Textbook thinking. Socrates, as for example in the case of the sun. I think that you would be contented with the statement that the sun is the brightest of the heavenly bodies which revolve about the earth. Certainly. Understand why. The reason is, as I was just now saying, that if you get at the difference and distinguishing characteristics of each thing, then, as many persons affirm, you will get at the definition or explanation of it. But while you lay hold only of the common and not of the characteristic notion, you will only have the definition of those things to which this common quality belongs. Theaetetus. I understand you, and your account of definition is, in my judgment, correct. Socrates. But he who, having right opinion about anything, can find out the difference which distinguishes it from other things, will know that of which before he had only an opinion. Theaetetus. Yes, that is what we are maintaining. Socrates, nevertheless, Theaetetus, on a nearer view, I find myself quite disappointed. The picture, which at a distance was not so bad, has now become altogether unintelligible. What do you mean? I will endeavor to explain. I will suppose myself to have true opinion of you, and if to this I add your definition, then I have knowledge, but if not, opinion only. Yes, the definition was assumed to be the interpretation of your difference. True. But when I had only opinion, I had no conception of your distinguishing characteristics. I suppose not. Then I must have conceived of some general or common nature which no more belonged to you than to another. True. Tell me now, how in that case could I have formed a judgment of you any more than of anyone else? Suppose that I imagine Theaetetus to be a man who has a nose, eyes, and mouth, and every other member complete. How would that enable me to distinguish Theaetetus from Theodorus, or from some outer barbarian? How could it? Socrates, or if I had further conceived of you not only as having nose and eyes, but as having a snub nose and prominent eyes, should I have any more notion of you than of myself and others who resemble me? Certainly not. Surely I can have no conception of Theaetetus until your snub-nosedness has left an impression on my mind different from the snub-nosedness of all others whom I have ever seen, and until your other peculiarities have a like distinctness. And so when I meet you tomorrow, the right opinion will be recalled. Most true. Then right opinion implies the perception of differences. Clearly. What then shall we say of adding reason or explanation to right opinion? If the meaning is that we should form an opinion of the way in which something differs from another thing, the proposal is ridiculous. How so? We are supposed to acquire a right opinion of the differences which distinguishes one thing from another when we have already a right opinion of them, and so we go round and round. The revolution of the skittle or pestle or any other rotary machine in the same circles is as nothing compared with such a requirement, and we may be truly described as the blind directing the blind. For to add those things which we already have in order that we may learn what we already think is like a soul utterly benighted. I'm sure it's something bad. Theaetetus, tell me, what were you going to say just now when you asked the question? Socrates, if, my boy, the argument in speaking of adding the definition had used the word to know and not merely have an opinion of the difference, this, which is the most promising of all the definitions of knowledge, would have come to a pretty end, for to know is surely to acquire knowledge. True. And so when the question is asked, what is knowledge? This argument will answer right opinion with knowledge. Knowledge, that is, of difference. For this, as the said argument maintains, is adding the definition. Theaetetus, that seems to be true. Socrates, but how utterly foolish when we are asking what is knowledge, that the reply should be only right opinion with knowledge of difference, or of anything. And so, Theaetetus, knowledge is neither sensation, nor true opinion, nor your definition and explanation accompanying and added to true opinion. I suppose not. And are you still in labour and travail, my dear friend, or have you brought all that you have to say about knowledge to the birth? Theaetetus, I am sure, Socrates, that you have elicited from me a good deal more than ever was in me. Socrates, and does not my art show that you have brought forth wind, and that the offspring of your brain are not worth bringing up? Very true. Socrates, but if, Theaetetus, you should ever conceive afresh, you will be all the better for the present investigation, and if not, you will be soberer and humbler and gentler to other men, and will be too modest to fancy that you know what you do not know. These are the limits of my art. I can no further go, nor do I know aught of the things which great and famous men know of, or have known in this or former ages. The office of midwife, like my mother, I have received from God. She delivered woman, I deliver thinkers. But they must be young and noble and fair. And now I have to go to the porch of the King Archon, where I am to meet Meletus and his indictment. Tomorrow morning, Theodorus, I shall hope to see you again at this place. Thus far our scripture of the evening. And thus far Theaetetus, ending, as so many of Plato's dialogues, it seems, with a hint at Socrates dying. At Socrates' impeding death, impeding. I did finish the course on the Peterson Academy on metaphysics and epistemology, and it was very good. And of course, he rounded up the course with reference to the great unknown out there above. And in here, how do we refer to atoms and smaller stuff? As above, so below. He quoted Carl Sagan, amongst others. He also quoted Darwin on agnosticism. And the famous quote from Carl Sagan about how we are star stuff. And we are the universe trying to know itself. I really do hope we don't. We don't sabotage ourselves. So only two things, well, more, but it comes down to two things. I wrote down how seeing the differences, the idiosyncrasies, paying attention. I'm quite sure Professor Stephen, his surname is Hawking? No. No. That's when you have a mind that is too fond of making connections that's not really there. The Peterson Academy lecturer. Oh, he spoke on attention too. And how important that is for knowledge. To really know something, we have to pay attention to it. What is knowledge? I was thinking about my ramblings of last night, and I have to call bullshit on myself. Because the only reason why I'm not always capable of formulating these ideas or saying what is knowledge is because I do not have enough knowledge of the subject. I literally taught at every single level that a human being can teach, from kindergarten to university. So teaching, expressing ideas, formulating in such a way that it is understandable is actually my thing. So I take back everything I said yesterday, which is probably something you will hear me say a lot. I am a woman. We change with the moon. And that is part of what I said, though, that I'm still trying to figure it out. But then I was thinking, okay, remember we said the whole idea is not propositional knowledge. And I feel my frustration that I'm not capable of formulating the propositions. Because I myself are very much a slave to propositional tyranny. So I'm gonna allow that when it pops up, because it's fun. But we're gonna search for the other types of knowing. What is knowledge? Maybe what I'm thinking now is knowledge is right action, right words, right speech, in other words, right work. I do not know all the Buddhistic. I know I am quoting from Buddhistic teaching, but I do not know all the right. Is it the Eightfold Path? Was it 4 that I'm quoting? Or 5? Oh, can't know. Knowledge is phronesis. Knowledge is that which enables us to act wisely in the sense of practical wisdom. Knowing how, here and now. Knowledge is loving. I had to think of my dear friend, Ryan, when Theaetetus told Socrates that you are eliciting more from me than I thought was possible inside me. We practiced dialectic ideologos together for more than a year with 2 other extraordinary gentlemen before I left the Vacuum circle. But we still speak to each other often, and although we do not follow the structured play, every time we talk I feel that. I feel like I'm saying so much more than I was capable of saying. And maybe that is why this talking into the void will always be imperfect. Because I do not have your questions. I do not have your point of view to incorporate. I do not even have your facial expressions to read and interpret and see like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Or it seems I'm going in the right direction. And I've noticed that although I said at the beginning that I would assume no knowledge, I often do assume a lot of knowledge. Which would have been fine if we could indeed have tea afterwards. And you could say, like, it wasn't quite clear when you were referring, like, I don't actually know Animal Farm. What's the pigs? What? And yet, this is a burden that we were called to. And so we shall carry it and see what happens. May the spirit of Sophia be with you.